Long before maps had edges, travelers looked toward the horizon and wondered what waited beyond the places they knew. Some said there was nothing but endless cold. Others believed something extraordinary lay hidden there, a sanctuary untouched by hardship, thriving in a perpetual spring. And as these early imaginations stirred, the idea of Hyperborea began to form, growing like a warm light flickering just past the reach of winter's breath. Imagine now that you are moving slowly toward that distant light. Not walking, not sailing, simply being carried, as though peace itself has taken you by the hand. With each breath, the dull noise of the present fades away, and the world that rises around you feels older than memory and softer than dreams. But before we arrive, you might wonder, how did people who never traveled so far north picture a place so gentle, so impossibly calm? What urged them to create a land beyond the reach of every storm? To understand, we drift first to the earliest poets, people who watched the skies closely, who listened to winds like they were voices. They noticed that the cold gales sweeping down in winter always came from the same direction, from regions no one they knew had ever touched. And in their stories, this fierce wind became a figure, a presence, a guardian of the far north. If such a force controlled the harshness of winter, then surely, they reasoned, there must be a place lying even farther beyond him, a place untouched by his breath, where warmth persisted through every season. Picture that, a land sitting quietly above the storms, where the air remains soft even as the world below shivers. A place where crops never fail, where forests remain lush, and where sunlight seems reluctant to leave. Could such a land truly exist? Or was it simply a wish woven into the fabric of myth, an echo of humanity's longing for peace? As you settle deeper into this wandering thought, imagine the storytellers who shaped these early visions. They lived by the cycles of nature, by harvests, by winter shortages, by unpredictable seasons. Life could feel fragile. Yet somewhere beyond the mountains, beyond the icy rivers, they pictured a people living without fear of sickness, without the weight of scarcity. Was it hope? Was it a reflection of what they wished the world could be? Or did rumors truly drift down from travelers who glimpsed more temperate lands far to the north? These questions, soothing and slow, follow us as we descend gently into the rhythm of the ancient world. The stories say that the people of Hyperborea lived in harmony so deep that even their songs shaped the air around them. Music, for them, wasn't merely entertainment, it was part of the land's very breath. Soft flutes and gentle strings created melodies that floated across fields, resonating with the quiet, steady pulse of their eternal spring. And perhaps you can hear a faint trace of that music now, drifting at the edges of your thoughts, forming and dissolving like mist. But there is more to this realm than beauty and melody. As we drift deeper, something else becomes clear. The people described in these old stories weren't merely fortunate, they were revered. Travelers far to the south believed they shared a closeness to the divine, an ease of spirit that came not from wealth or victory, but from a profound balance with the world. Imagine a society where no one rushes, no one fears hunger, and every voice is part of a larger harmony. What might such harmony feel like in your own body, right now, as your muscles soften and your breathing slows? Yet, even in these peaceful legends, there is always a small mystery humming beneath the surface, a veil not meant to be lifted all at once. Ancient writers hinted at rituals practiced by these northern dwellers, gentle offerings made not through sacrifice but through celebration. Their devotion wasn't born from worry, but from gratitude. They honored the turning of the seasons even though the seasons seemed unwilling to change for them. And through these rituals, they maintained a connection to forces greater than themselves. One might wonder, what did they understand about the world that others had forgotten? Imagine, too, the travelers who supposedly met these people, strangers arriving from distant and harsher lands. The stories say these visitors returned transformed. They spoke of astonishing health, of lifespans that stretched far beyond what seemed possible, of wisdom carried lightly across centuries. They spoke of a purity in the air, something crisp yet warm, something that made the mind clearer and sleep deeper. And even though few believed these accounts literally, the idea lingered, as ideas often do when they resonate with a deep human longing. What if there truly was a place where illness held no power? What if age unfolded slowly, like a flower opening in the sunlight? Whether real or imagined, the allure of such a world remains, drawing us gently onward. But myths rarely stay simple. Over time, the tales expanded. Poets described gardens blooming without end, fruit hanging heavy on branches long after harvests should have passed. They told of celebrations lasting for days, of feasts that required no toil, of people who greeted each dawn as though it were their first. Through these stories, Hyperborea became more than a location. It became a symbol, a reminder of what humanity dreams of during its heaviest moments. And still, a quiet question lingers as the horizon widens ahead of us. If a place untouched by cold and sorrow truly existed, why did so few claim to have reached it? As we drift further into the legend, imagine the landscape changing around you with the slow certainty of a rising tide. The air grows lighter, the world quieter, as if the noise of ordinary life has been left somewhere far behind. Ahead lies the mystery of how this northern paradise became woven not only into poetry, but into the writings of historians, men who prided themselves on evidence, on travel, on stories confirmed through careful listening. And yet even they, cautious as they were, could not resist the pull of Hyperborea. Picture one such historian, a traveler gathering tales from sailors, merchants, wanderers from the edges of the known world. He hears whispers of a northern people unlike any others, people whose lives stretch out long beyond ordinary years, whose bodies remain untroubled by sickness, whose hearts seem unburdened by conflict. He writes what he can, uncertain whether he is recording truth or hope. But he records it anyway, because something in these stories feels too ancient, too persistent, to dismiss. Imagine him seated by a fire, listening to a weathered traveler who claims to have glimpsed an outpost of this hidden realm. The man speaks softly, as though afraid the dream will vanish if he raises his voice. He describes faces unlined by hardship, voices that carry warmth even in the coldest nights, and a landscape so serene it feels like the world has paused its relentless turning. Was this Hyperborea? Or simply a place touched by unusual calm? Even he cannot say. But the story takes root, as stories often do, growing beyond the teller's intentions. As centuries passed, these tales began to merge, shaping a portrait of a people whose relationship with nature defied every rule others lived by. In lands where winter dominated half the year, the idea of a place beyond winter's reach sparked imagination like a lantern in deep fog. What would it feel like to live in a world where the seasons never turned harsh? Where the ground fed you without demanding backbreaking labor? Where storms never tore through homes or crops? Would people live differently, speak more gently, breathe more fully, trust more easily? Many ancient writers believed so. They imagined that a life free from constant struggle would give birth to wisdom rather than complacency, harmony rather than ambition, a kind of clarity that only emerges in those who no longer live in fear. And as you listen to this now, perhaps a part of you wonders, if hardship shapes most of the world, what might humanity become in a place without it? But no legend remains untouched by human curiosity. The more often Hyperborea appeared in old writings, the more eagerly people speculated about its location. Some placed it far beyond towering northern mountains. Others believed it rested on an island encircled by waters no ship had ever crossed. A few whispered that it existed only for those chosen by fate, visible not on maps, but in the rare alignment of courage, patience, and the willingness to follow quiet roads to their end. Imagine ancient scholars debating these possibilities, tracing their fingers across maps where knowledge faded into blank spaces. Those uncharted regions seemed to absorb every dream, every fear, every longing. For the world beyond the familiar always invites the mind to wander. And so Hyperborea became not just a place but an idea, one that spread like the soft glow of dawn on mountains unseen. But among all these accounts, one thread stands out, a story repeated in different centuries, by different authors, each far removed from the other. They describe offerings traveling from the distant north through many hands, carried from tribe to tribe, village to village, until they reached a sacred island far to the south. The gifts were small, wrapped in simple materials, yet treated with extraordinary reverence. No one dared open them, No one dared disturb their delicate journey. Why would such distant people send anything at all? And how did these gifts cross such vast distances without ever being lost? To imagine that path is to imagine a bridge stretching across cultures, across languages, across landscapes that changed from forest to steppe to mountain and back again. Picture the people who carried those offerings for a short part of the journey. One group traveled a few days, then passed the bundle forward. Another tribe carried it across valleys. Another brought it toward the sea. Each knew only that the gift came from a people beyond the northern winds, and that to deliver it was to honor something greater than themselves. And so the myth deepens. What kind of society inspires such respect? What kind of land inspires such devotion? As we drift further, imagine another thread of the legend, one that tells of a traveler from Hyperborea himself. A solitary figure said to wander through distant cities, carrying a symbol from his homeland, a small object that glowed like captured sunlight. Some said it was a charm. Others claimed it held knowledge. Others believed it served as a token of his purpose. Whatever its nature, the stories agree on one thing: his presence changed the cities he visited. People listened to him. They felt calm around him, as though he carried a piece of that peaceful northern land within him. Whether such a traveler truly existed hardly matters now. The idea persisted because it comforted people. It whispered that wisdom could travel even from unreachable places, that distant lands might send guidance to the world beyond their borders. And perhaps you can feel the echo of that in your own drifting thoughts, a sense that somewhere far north of memory, there may be a place where clarity grows like wildflowers. As the legend expanded, some thinkers began to argue that Hyperborea was not a place at all but a symbol. A symbol of what lies beyond struggle. A symbol of the peace that human hearts seek in quiet hours. A symbol of what the world might feel like without the constant push of time, or fear, or decay. Yet others insisted that the land must have been real, pointing to faint clues scattered across ancient texts, clues about long daylight hours, gentle summers, and air so pure it felt like silk. Could a real place have inspired these stories? Could a distant northern land truly have seemed like paradise to travelers from warmer, harsher climates? Or did imagination carry them the rest of the way? These questions drift with us, not demanding answers, simply inviting reflection. As we continue drifting deeper into this ancient tale, imagine the northern light shifting around you, softening into a glow that seems to blur the line between land and sky. For a moment, it feels as though you are suspended between worlds, the familiar one you came from, and the quiet, distant realm you are slowly approaching. Hyperborea begins to feel less like a destination and more like a presence, something sensed before it is ever seen. By the time the legends reached the classical world, Hyperborea had already grown into something grander than a simple geographic curiosity. Some thinkers propose that the land sat beneath a sky illuminated by unusually long days, sunlight lingering endlessly, circling rather than sinking. It must have seemed unbelievable to those who lived farther south, people accustomed to ordinary nights and predictable seasons. And yet the idea fascinated them. A place where daylight stretched so long that one could walk for hours without the faintest hint of dusk. What kind of life would flourish under such gentle and constant brightness? Imagine how such light would feel on your skin, warm but never harsh. In these stories, the inhabitants lived in a glow that softened everything it touched. Shadows were rare. The night, when it came, was brief and peaceful, like a quiet breath rather than a turning of the world. Travelers who heard these tales imagined gardens growing with astonishing vigor, fields so fertile they required no effort to maintain, and rivers that flowed with such clarity that they mirrored the sky perfectly. Were these descriptions literal, or expressions of longing? The truth is lost, but the dreams remain vivid. Picture now an ancient philosopher leaning over a scroll, trying to decipher the scattered accounts left by earlier writers. He reads of a land where storms avoid the coast, where breezes carry scents of blooming trees even in seasons when most lands grow barren. He pauses, wondering whether these reports were exaggerated, yet he continues reading, compelled by some quiet curiosity. If so many sources mention the same northern paradise, could there be a kernel of truth buried within the poetry? It is easier to believe that people invented the idea out of longing than to imagine an actual land untouched by hardship. But longing itself often points towards something real. If not a place, then a desire deeply woven into the human heart. Hyperborea offered ancient listeners a vision of life beyond struggle, beyond sickness, beyond fear. And in a world where survival was uncertain, where winters could be cruel and unpredictable, such a vision would have felt like a balm. One detail appears again and again across the centuries. The Hyperboreans were said to value stillness. Not laziness, but a mindful quiet, a calm awareness of the world around them. Their days flowed like gentle water, unhurried, unbroken. They did not measure time by urgency but by harmony. What would a life shaped around stillness look like? How different might the world seem if every moment stretched out softly, free from the pressure to rush forward? In this vision of the North, people moved through their days with a grace that others envied. They lived simply, yet nothing about their existence felt lacking. They built homes shaped by the contours of the land, crafted tools that blended beauty with purpose, and created music said to echo the rhythms of the earth itself. Their songs were meant not to impress but to soothe, melodies that rose and fell like waves on a shore. Can you imagine such a sound now? A tune so gentle it quiets the mind the moment it reaches your ears? Yet among all these peaceful descriptions, one element of the legend remains especially intriguing. The Hyperboreans were thought to be extraordinarily long-lived. Not immortal, not untouched by the passage of time, but aging far more slowly than others. Some writers claimed they lived twice as long as ordinary people. Others hinted that their lives spanned multiple centuries. Whether literal or symbolic, these accounts reveal a belief that the harmony of their world extended into their very bodies, allowing them to remain strong and serene far longer than anyone else. Consider the possibility that such longevity might stem not from magic, but from the absence of stress, conflict, and fear. In this imagined land, no one rushed, no one fought for survival, no one bore the constant weight of uncertainty. Could a peaceful life itself extend one's years? Ancient philosophers wondered the same. They speculated that the gentleness of Hyperborea preserved its inhabitants, as if the land itself offered a kind of protection. But even the calmest legends carry hints of mystery. Some accounts describe a sacred place within Hyperborea, a sanctuary where songs were sung only during certain celestial alignments. Outsiders never witnessed these rituals. They could only rely on distant whispers describing celebrations that lasted for days and nights without pause. The songs, it was said, were not simply performances. They were expressions of gratitude, acknowledgments of the land's perpetual kindness. What might it feel like to live in a place where even celebrations were expressions of peace rather than distractions from hardship? Another thread in the myth speaks of elders who served as guides rather than rulers. They did not command but advised, sharing their experiences gently, allowing others to draw their own conclusions. Governance, in this vision, was an extension of their harmony, a natural process rather than an imposed structure. Some describe these elders as individuals so wise that even their silence carried meaning. Their presence alone calmed those around them. Imagine standing near someone whose very stillness quieted the noise within your mind. What might such a presence feel like? Over time, the legend of Hyperborea grew so widespread that explorers attempted to locate it. They followed rivers northward, climbed icy peaks, crossed wide plains where the wind hummed like a distant hymn. They found breathtaking landscapes, but none matched the descriptions perfectly. Still, the search continued, because the idea itself was too captivating to abandon. Some returned with stories of northern tribes who lived in ways that seemed peaceful and content. Others found nothing but harsh ice and relentless wind. But each attempt added another layer to the myth, making Hyperborea both more mysterious and more beloved. Eventually, thinkers began to wonder whether Hyperborea was ever meant to be found on a map. Perhaps it was a reflection, an ideal painted onto the northern sky by people seeking solace from the difficulties of life. Perhaps it symbolized a world where humanity lived in balance with nature, where generosity flowed effortlessly, and where time itself seemed patient. Yet even if it was symbolic, why did so many different cultures describe it in such similar ways? Could memories of ancient migrations have seeded the tales? Could early travelers have glimpsed temperate northern summers and mistaken them for a land of eternal spring? These questions drift through the centuries like soft snow, settling lightly but never fully forming into answers. And as you listen now, you may find that the allure of Hyperborea is not the truth behind the stories, but the feeling they evoke, the sense of a place where life moves gently, where peace is woven into the air, and where the distant hum of harmony reaches even those who have never seen its shores. As our journey enters its final stretch, imagine the northern glow deepening into a soft, pearlescent haze. The air here feels almost weightless, as though the world itself is exhaling a long-held breath. You've traveled far through centuries of stories, drifting past poets, historians, dreamers, wanderers, and still the essence of Hyperborea remains like a distant shore seen through morning mist. Close enough to sense, yet distant enough to preserve its quiet mystery. By the time medieval scholars inherited these ancient accounts, Hyperborea had transformed into a symbol far greater than any geographic speculation. To them, it represented a world untouched by corruption, a realm where humanity had not yet fractured into conflict and worry. They believed the North held secrets older than empires, secrets whispered into the land itself, preserved by people who lived without fear of scarcity or war. In their writings, Hyperborea became a reminder of humanity's forgotten origins, a place where wisdom and innocence walked side by side. Imagine a monk poring over fragile manuscripts in a quiet stone chamber. Candlelight flickers across the pages as he traces the lines describing this northern paradise. Outside, winter winds batter the walls, but inside, the words lift him into a calmer world. He reads of gentle seasons, of people whose laughter carried through warm valleys, of rituals shaped not by dread but by gratitude. And as he reads, something softens within him. Perhaps he wonders, as many did, whether Hyperborea still existed somewhere beyond the reach of ordinary life, or whether it had slipped into memory like a dream forgotten upon waking. The Renaissance brought new interpretations. Explorers set out with renewed determination, convinced the world still held corners uncharted. They sailed to icy coasts, traversed snow-laden forests, and climbed mountains where the wind sang like distant choirs. Many returned with maps fuller than before, but none returned with proof of Hyperborea. And yet the absence of evidence only deepened the fascination. Some argued that the land had never been physical at all. Others suggested it lay beyond the visible realm, a place reached not through travel but through understanding. Imagine these explorers sitting around a fire after long days of travel. Their boots are wet, their faces windburned, yet their eyes glow with a strange mixture of exhaustion and wonder. They speak of glimpses, of remote villages where people lived with unusual peace, of summer nights that stretched far longer than expected, of landscapes so serene they felt otherworldly. None of these places matched the full grandeur of the myth, but each carried a faint resemblance, like echoes of a distant song. And from those echoes, hope continued. As centuries turned, the myth of Hyperborea shifted again. Mystics and philosophers claimed it was not a place of geography but of consciousness, a realm accessible to those who cultivated stillness and clarity. They described it as a state of mind where anxiety dissolves, where the noise of the world grows quiet, where one glimpses the deeper harmony beneath all things. In their writings, Hyperborea became a metaphor for inner peace, the northern winds symbolizing the mental storms that guard the threshold of clarity. Beyond those winds, they said, lies a place untouched by fear. And perhaps that is why the legend still survives. Even now, in a world mapped down to its smallest corners, people feel the pull of Hyperborea, not as a location, but as an idea. A reminder that somewhere within the vastness of human imagination, there remains a sanctuary where time slows and gentleness prevails. A place that invites you to breathe deeper, to release the weight you carry, to believe that calm is not only possible but natural. Imagine now that you yourself have reached the border of this legendary realm. Ahead, the light takes on a subtle warmth, as if welcoming you. The ground feels soft beneath your feet, the landscape open and inviting. You walk without effort, guided by a quiet intuition. The air carries the faint melody of distant flutes, each note drifting like a feather on the breeze. There is no rush, no destination, only the comfort of being exactly where you are meant to be. You notice figures in the distance, moving with unhurried grace. Their faces carry the serenity of people who have known centuries of harmony. They do not speak, yet their presence brings a sense of peace that settles deep within your chest. In the stories, these were the elders whose wisdom shaped the rhythm of their world, not through rules or commands, but through example. Their stillness encourages your own, inviting you to let go of the noise that once filled your mind. As you step closer, the landscape opens into a valley bathed in golden light. Blossoms sway gently in a breeze that feels neither warm nor cold, as though it has found a perfect balance. A river winds through the valley, its surface smooth as polished stone. You hear nothing but the soft murmur of water and the faint hum of wind brushing through tall grass. It feels as though the land itself is breathing, slow and steady, encouraging your body to do the same. A question arises, gentle and natural. Could this be the true meaning of Hyperborea? Not a distant country, but the experience of profound calm, revealed only when you journey far enough past the world's distractions? Ancient stories spoke of travelers who returned from the north changed, carrying a sense of deep inner quiet wherever they went. Perhaps they had not found a physical land at all. Perhaps they had simply touched an inner stillness so pure that it transformed the way they saw the world. If such moments existed then, they exist now, waiting in the spaces between breaths, in the soft hours of night when the mind grows receptive. As you continue deeper into the valley, imagine finding a place to rest, a smooth patch of earth beneath a tall tree whose branches sway in slow, rhythmic movements. You sit, feeling the ground cradle you gently. The air is cool enough to refresh you, warm enough to soothe. And as you breathe, you sense that everything around you is alive with subtle harmony. Nothing pushes. Nothing demands. The world sings quietly, and you are part of that song. Here, at last, you feel the essence of Hyperborea, the peace that comes when struggle fades, when time loosens its grip, when the mind settles into stillness. It may be a myth, a memory, a metaphor, but in this moment, it feels real, surrounding you like a soft, protective light. Two whispers linger in the air, carried on the gentle wind. Sometimes paradise is not a place, but a moment of quiet inside you. And sometimes the journey home is simply the act of remembering how to breathe. As this story comes to rest, let the calm of Hyperborea drift with you into sleep. If you enjoyed this peaceful journey, you're welcome to return anytime. And if you wish to explore more gentle legends and calming narratives, Sleepy Owl will always be here to guide you through quiet realms where dreams unfold softly.